The bullet whizzed past Theodora Sinclair's ear, splintering the wooden post behind her as she ducked behind the water trough, her heart hammering against her ribs. The year was 1878, and the small mining town of Whispering Creek, Colorado, was supposed to be her fresh start, not her final resting place. "You can't hide forever, Sinclair," the gruff voice of Jasper Holloway, the man who'd been hunting her since St. Louis, carried across the dusty Main Street. "Your pa's debts are mine to collect, and I aim to collect them one way or another." Theo pressed her back against the rough wood of the trough, trying to steady her breathing as tears threatened to spill. She wouldn't cry, not here, not now. Her father had been dead for 3 months, his gambling debts apparently outliving him, and Holloway had tracked her halfway across the country. Another shot rang out, followed by a different sound, the rhythmic pounding of hooves. Through the settling dust, Theo glimpsed a rider approaching at breakneck speed, his long duster billowing behind him. "That's enough." The newcomer's voice was deep, authoritative. "Lower your weapon, Holloway, or the next bullet won't be a warning shot." Theo risked peering over the trough to see a tall man atop a chestnut stallion, his Winchester aimed steady at Holloway. The sun glinted off the silver star pinned to his vest, the town sheriff. "This ain't your business, Lawson," Holloway spat. "The girl's father owes me money." "A debt you claim with no proof," Sheriff Lucas Westbrook replied, his voice cool and measured. "Now drop your gun and leave my town or spend the night in my jail. Your choice." For a tense moment, Holloway's finger twitched on the trigger. Then, with a curse, he holstered his weapon. "This ain't over," he growled, glaring at Theo before mounting his horse and spurring it out of town. The sheriff dismounted in one fluid motion, crossing to where Theo still crouched. He extended a calloused hand. "Are you hurt, miss?" Theo shook her head, taking his offered hand and rising to her feet. "No, her voice cracked as the reality of how close she'd come to death hit her. She turned away quickly, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. "It's all right," he said softly, noticing her struggle. "Holloway's a known bounty hunter with questionable methods. You're not his first target," Theo nodded, still not meeting his eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff. I should go." "Wait." His voice stopped her. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Lucas Westbrook." She finally looked up at him, taking in the strong line of his jaw, the concern in his blue eyes. "Theodora Sinclair," she replied. "Most people call me Theo." "Well, Miss Sinclair, I believe you've had enough excitement for one day. Allow me to escort you to wherever you're staying." As they walked down the dusty street toward the boarding house where she'd rented a room, Theo felt the curious gazes of townspeople following them. She'd arrived in Whispering Creek just 3 days ago, hoping to start anew as the town's schoolteacher. "So," Lucas said, breaking the silence, "what brought you to our little corner of the territory?" Theo hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I saw an advertisement for a schoolteacher. My father passed recently and I needed a fresh start." Lucas nodded. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Was your father a gambler?" The direct question startled her. "How did you?" "Holloway usually chases gambling debts," he explained. "Real or imagined?" "My father had weaknesses," Theo admitted. "After my mother died, he sought comfort at card tables." "I didn't realize how deep he'd fallen until after he was gone." They reached the boarding house, and Theo turned to thank him. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it, and she quickly brushed it away, embarrassed. Lucas's gaze softened. "You don't have to hide your tears, Miss Sinclair." "I'm not crying," she insisted. Even as another tear escaped with gentle fingers, Lucas tilted her chin up. "In my experience, holding in grief only makes it grow stronger. If you ever need to cry, my office door is always open." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her composure entirely. "Thank you, Sheriff, but I'll be fine. Good day." She hurried inside before he could see her control slip further. Through the lace curtains of her room, Theo watched Lucas stand in the street for a long moment, before finally mounting his horse and riding away. Only then did she allow the tears to fall freely, wondering if she'd ever truly be free of her father's mistakes. The following morning, Theo stood before 20 curious faces in Whispering Creek's one-room schoolhouse. Children ranging from 6 to 16 filled the rough-hewn benches, their expressions varying from excitement to boredom to outright suspicion. "Good morning," she began, smoothing her plain calico dress. "I'm Miss Sinclair, your new teacher. I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you." A boy of about 12 raised his hand. "Are you the lady Sheriff Westbrook saved yesterday?" Heat rushed to Theo's cheeks. Yes, there was a misunderstanding that the sheriff helped resolve. Pa says a man was trying to kill you," a little girl piped up from the front row. Margaret Jenkins. Theo recognized the mayor's daughter from their brief introduction yesterday. That's quite enough gossip. Now, let's begin with roll call. Despite the rocky start, the day progressed smoothly. Theo found herself genuinely enjoying the children's eager minds. Even the older boys, who'd initially seemed determined to test her authority, were won over when she demonstrated her knowledge of mathematics and sciences subjects her father had insisted she study, despite society's preferences for female accomplishments. As she dismissed the class at day's end, she noticed Sheriff Westbrook leaning against the hitching post outside, hat in hand. "Sheriff," she acknowledged, surprised to find her heart beating faster. "Miss Sinclair," he replied with a slight tip of his head. "I thought I'd check how your first day went." "Quite well, thank you." She gathered her books, trying to appear composed. "Though I believe I'm already the subject of town gossip." Lucas's mouth quirked into a half-smile. "Small towns run on gossip like engines run on coal. You'll get used to it." "I'm not certain I want to get used to being the center of attention." "Fair enough." He gestured to her books. "May I walk you home?" They strolled down the dusty main street as the afternoon sun cast long shadows. Several townspeople nodded greetings, their curious gazes following the pair. "I telegraphed St. Louis about Holloway," Lucas said. "Seems he's wanted for extortion in Missouri, been targeting relatives of deceased gamblers, claiming debts with no proof." Theo stopped walking. "So my father might not have owed him anything at all, it's possible." Lucas's expression turned serious. "But Holloway's dangerous. He won't give up easily, especially now that his reputation's on the line." "What am I supposed to do? I can't live in fear." "You won't have to." His blue eyes held steady on hers. "I'll keep you safe, Miss Sinclair, you have my word." Something in his tone made her believe him, despite having learned the hard way that men's promises were often empty. "Thank you, Sheriff. Lucas," he corrected gently. "When I'm not wearing this star, I'm just Lucas." That evening, as Theo prepared for bed in her modest boarding house room, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it cautiously to find Mrs. Abernathy, the boarding house owner, holding a small package. "This came for you, dear," the older woman said, handing over the brown paper parcel. "A boy delivered it just now." Puzzled, Theo thanked her and closed the door. The package contained a small book of poetry by Emily Dickinson and a simple note. "For the evenings when memories grow too loud. L.W." She ran her fingers over the embossed leather cover, touched by the thoughtful gift. How had he known that books were her refuge? That poetry had been her mother's passion, passed down to her like a precious heirloom. For the first time since arriving in Whispering Creek, Theo felt something beyond fear and uncertainty, a small spark of possibility that perhaps this place could indeed become home. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Mornings and afternoons were spent in the schoolhouse, evenings grading papers and preparing lessons. Lucas made a habit of walking her home most days, their conversations growing deeper as they shared pieces of themselves. She learned he'd come west after the war, seeking purpose after seeing too much death. He'd been sheriff for 6 years, earning the town's respect through fairness and unwavering integrity. He spoke little of his family back east, only that letters were exchanged at Christmas. In turn, she told him about growing up in St. Louis, her mother's early death from consumption, her father's slide into gambling and drinking, how she taught piano lessons to wealthy families to keep food on their table while her father dreamed of the big win that never came. "You're stronger than you realize," Lucas told her one evening as they paused outside the boarding house. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, making his blue eyes appear almost violet. "Most people would have broken under what you've endured." "I've broken plenty," Theo admitted. "I've just gotten good at putting the pieces back together." His gaze softened. "There's no shame in showing the cracks, Theodora." The way he said her full name sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cooling evening air. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her, wanted him to kiss her, but the church bell rang the hour, breaking the spell. "I should go in," she murmured, reluctantly stepping back. "Good night, Miss Sinclair." His smile held something unspoken, something that followed her into her dreams that night. On a crisp Saturday morning in early October, Lucas invited her on a picnic. "There's a place up in the foothills," he explained. "Best view of the valley you'll ever see." Theo hesitated. "Would that be appropriate?" His expression grew serious. "I've asked Mrs. Jenkins to join us as chaperone. I wouldn't risk your reputation, Theo." The fact that he'd thought of her standing in the community only endeared him to her more. "Then I'd be delighted." The ride into the hills was spectacular. Aspen trees blazed gold against the evergreens, and the air carried the crisp scent of autumn. Mrs. Jenkins, the mayor's wife, rode with them in the wagon, chattering about town gossip and her daughter's progress in school. Lucas guided them to a clearing overlooking the valley, where Whispering Creek looked like a child's toy town nestled between mountain ridges. While Mrs. Jenkins set out the picnic, Lucas showed Theo a small waterfall tumbling over rocks into a crystal-clear pool. "It's beautiful," Theo breathed, mesmerized by the dancing water. "This is my thinking spot," Lucas admitted. "When the job gets heavy or when the memories come back too strong, I come here." She glanced at him. "Memories of the war," he nodded, a shadow crossing his features. "Among other things, we all carry ghosts, Theo." "Yes," she said softly, "we do." Their eyes held for a long moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Theo felt something shift, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. The peaceful day was shattered upon their return to town. As they rolled down the main street, Theo noticed a familiar figure lounging outside the saloon. Jasper, Holloway's cold eyes locked on hers, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Lucas saw him too, his entire body tensing. "Stay in the wagon," he instructed, helping Mrs. Jenkins down before approaching Holloway. Theo couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw Holloway's smug expression and Lucas's increasingly rigid posture. When Lucas returned, his jaw was clenched tight. "What is it?" she asked, fear creeping back into her heart. "He claims to have proof now, a promissory note signed by your father." Lucas helped her down from the wagon. "I told him to bring it to my office tomorrow where we can verify it properly. And if it's real." Lucas's expression softened as he looked at her. "Then we'll deal with it, together." That night, sleep evaded Theo. If the note was genuine, she had no means to pay such a debt. Her teacher's salary barely covered her modest expenses. Would she have to leave Whispering Creek just as she'd begun to feel at home, just as she'd begun to fall in love? The realization struck her with stunning clarity. She loved Lucas Westbrook, his quiet strength, his integrity, the gentle way he looked at her as if she were something precious. But what future could they have if her past kept hunting her? Morning brought no answers, only a leaden sense of dread as she dressed for church. The whole town would be there, including Holloway and Lucas. The thought of facing them both made her stomach twist. Lucas met her outside the boarding house, looking as if he hadn't slept either. "You all right?" he asked quietly as they walked toward the white clapboard church. "As well as can be expected," she replied, forcing a smile. The service passed in a blur. Theo was acutely aware of Holloway's presence in the back pew, his eyes boring into her throughout the sermon. When the final hymn ended, she hurried outside, needing air. Lucas found her beneath the old oak tree beside the church. "Holloway wants to meet now," he said, "in my office." She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Let's get this over with." The sheriff's office was stifling despite the cool autumn day. Holloway sprawled in a chair, boots propped on Lucas's desk, a yellowed paper in his hand. "Here's your proof, Sheriff," he drawled, waving the document. $5,000 owed by Edmund Sinclair to me, with his signature right there. Lucas took the paper, examining it carefully before passing it to Theo. Her father's signature did indeed scrawl across the bottom, a signature she knew intimately from years of forging notes to her teachers when he was too drunk to attend parents' meetings. Except this wasn't quite right. "This is a forgery," she said, looking up. Holloway's face darkened. "You calling me a liar, girl?" "I'm calling you a forger," Theo replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "My father always crossed his titikes with a downward stroke, not upward, and he looped his estikes differently. I should know. I've seen his signature every day of my life." Lucas took the paper back, studying it more closely. "She's right. This isn't the same signature as on the legal documents filed after his death." He fixed Holloway with a hard stare. "You're under arrest for forgery and attempted extortion." What happened next unfolded in seconds. Holloway lunged across the desk, knife flashing in his hand. Lucas shouted for Theo to get back as he grappled with the larger man. They crashed into shelves, sending papers flying. In the chaos, Theo spotted Lucas's spare revolver in the desk drawer. She grabbed it, hands shaking but grip firm as her father had taught her years ago. "Stop!" she commanded, aiming at Holloway. Both men froze, Holloway's knife pressed against Lucas's throat, a thin line of blood already visible. "Drop the gun, girl," Holloway snarled. "Or your sheriff dies right here." "Theo, get out of here," Lucas urged, wincing as the knife pressed deeper. Time seemed to slow. Theo saw her hands steady, felt her breathing calm. "I won't miss," she promised, meeting Holloway's gaze. "My father taught me to shoot when I was 12. Said a woman alone needed protection. Now drop the knife." Something in her tone, perhaps the absolute certainty in it, made Holloway hesitate. In that split second, Lucas twisted, driving his elbow into Holloway's ribs. The knife clattered to the floor. Lucas tackled him, the two men crashing to the floorboards. Theo kept the gun trained on them, ready to fire if needed, but Lucas quickly gained the upper hand. Within moments, he had Holloway face down, wrists shackled behind his back. "You all right?" Lucas asked, breathing hard as he hauled Holloway to his feet. Theo nodded, carefully placing the gun on the desk. The reality of what had just happened washed over her, and she felt her knees weaken. She sank into a chair, hands trembling now that the danger had passed. After locking Holloway in a cell, Lucas returned to find Theo still seated, staring at her shaking hands. "Theo," he said softly, kneeling before her. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to his, seeing the cut on his neck, the concern in his gaze. "I could have lost you," she whispered, voice breaking, "but you didn't." He took her hands in his. "You saved my life." The tears she'd been holding back spilled over. She tried to turn away, to hide them as she always had, but Lucas gently cupped her face. "Don't hide your tears from me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Cry only into my chest from now on. Let me be the one who holds you through your sorrows." With those words, the last of her walls crumbled. Theo fell into his embrace, sobbing against his chest as he stroked her hair, murmuring gentle reassurances. For the first time since her mother's death, she allowed herself to truly break, knowing she was safe in arms strong enough to help her rebuild. When her tears finally subsided, Lucas tilted her face up to his. "I love you, Theodora Sinclair," he said simply. "I think I've loved you since that first day when you refused to show fear, even with a gun pointed at you." "I love you too," she whispered back, the words both terrifying and liberating. "But I come with complications, with a past. We all have pasts," he interrupted gently. "It's the future I'm interested in, a future with you." His lips found hers, the kiss tender at first, then deepening with a hunger that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, but not quite a demand either, a hope, an invitation to build something together. Yes, Theo answered, her heart fuller than she'd ever thought possible. News of their engagement spread through Whispering Creek like wildfire. Most townspeople were delighted. The sheriff and the schoolteacher made a fine match in their eyes. A few raised eyebrows at the speed of the courtship, but one look at the couple together silenced most criticism. Holloway was transported to Denver to stand trial for his various crimes, finally facing justice for the many people he'd terrorized. The telegram confirming his 20-year sentence arrived the day before Theo and Lucas's wedding, a fitting closure to that chapter of their lives. They married on a bright November afternoon, with autumn's last golden leaves drifting down around the church. Theo wore a simple cream dress with lace her mother had made years ago. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him, his expression so full of love that several women in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. "You are the bravest woman I've ever known," he whispered as they exchanged vows. "And I promise to be worthy of you every day of our lives." "And I promise to never hide my heart from you," she replied, voice steady despite the tears of joy threatening to spill. "In sorrow or in joy." Their first home together was a small cabin Lucas had been building on the edge of town, with a view of the mountains and plenty of room for a garden. On their wedding night, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Theo finally felt the past releasing its hold on her. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I never expected to find this," she admitted. "After everything with my father, I didn't believe happiness like this was possible." He gathered her closer. "Sometimes the best things come after our darkest moments." His lips brushed her temple. Like dawn after the longest night, spring brought new beginnings. Flowers bloomed in Theo's garden, the school thrived under her care, and the town elected Lucas to another term as sheriff. And on a perfect May morning, Theo woke early, slipped outside to watch the sunrise, and realized with quiet certainty that their family would soon grow by one. When she told Lucas that evening, his joy was something she would never forget, the way his hands trembled as they cradled her still flat stomach, the tears in his eyes as he whispered promises to their unborn child. "I never thought I could be this happy," he confessed, holding her close beneath the stars on their front porch. "After the war, I didn't think I deserved peace like this." "We heal each other," Theo said, fitting herself against him as perfectly as she had from the beginning. "That's what love does." Their daughter, Emily Rose Westbrook, was born the following winter, with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determination. Lucas was transformed by fatherhood, his tenderness with their tiny daughter revealing new depths to his character that made Theo fall in love with him all over again. As the years passed, their family grew. A son joined them 2 years later, then another daughter. The small cabin expanded with each child, Lucas adding rooms with the help of townsmen who had become dear friends. Theo continued teaching until their third child was born, then opened a small lending library in their home, sharing her love of books with the community. Lucas remained sheriff until silver hair peppered his temples, then trained his successor before retiring to focus on the horse breeding business he'd built. On their 20th anniversary, Lucas took Theo back to the waterfall where they'd picnicked during their courtship. Their children, now old enough to stay with friends, had helped him plan the surprise. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said, spreading a blanket near the pool where the water danced and sparkled just as it had 2 decades earlier. 20 years, Theo marveled, settling beside him. At 43, her auburn hair now held strands of silver, and laugh lines framed her eyes, but Lucas still looked at her as if she were the young schoolteacher who had stolen his heart. "Best 20 years of my life," he replied, taking her hand. "Though I'm hoping the next 20 will be even better." They reminisced about their life together, the challenges they'd faced, the joy of raising their children, the community they'd helped build. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Lucas pulled her close. "Remember what I told you that day in my office?" he asked. After Holloway, Theo smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. You told me to cry only into your chest from now on, and have you? She thought about the sorrows they'd weathered together, her miscarriage between their second and third children, the year of drought that nearly broke the town, the loss of Lucas's younger brother to influenza. Through it all, his arms had been her sanctuary. Yes, she answered softly. And your chest has been where I've laughed hardest, dreamed deepest, and loved most completely too. Lucas tipped her chin up, his blue eyes as mesmerizing as they had been the first time they met. I wouldn't have it any other way. As the stars emerged above them, Theo Westbrook reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a frightened young woman hiding behind a water trough to a beloved wife, mother, and cornerstone of Whispering Creek. Life had not always been easy, but it had been rich and full of a love she once thought existed only in books. Thank you, she whispered, for teaching me it's safe to show my heart. Lucas's answer was a kiss that held 2 decades of memories, and the promise of many more to come, a love story still being written beneath the vast western sky.